Did you know, just by sitting at your computer, you take 12 to 15 breaths per minute? That's thanks to the world's most powerful sponges keeping you alive. I'm talking about your lungs. At room temperature, you inhale about 25 sextillion molecules with just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. Let's see what it's like. I'll shrink myself into Mikey the Molecule and take you on a journey inside my friend here. Okay, remind me not to do that again right after lunch. Here we are. Now you can see the dust, particles, and germs floating around. Are you ready to go into the lungs? I can enter through the nose or the mouth. Let's take the more complicated path. We'll go through the nostrils. Whoa, a field of hair! The follicles inside your nose are as close to each other as the ones on your head. The nose hairs act as security guards. They stop dust, dirt, germs, and other particles from getting into the lungs. See that shiny stuff on the edges of the hairs? It's a thin coating of mucus. Yep, its job is to keep the lining of the nose moist and trap debris that builds up on the hairs. It's kind of like a nursery for boogers. Further inside the nose, you have even tinier hairs. Those are called the cilia, and you can only see them with a microscope. Their job is to move mucus and other small particles out of the airway. Finally some room. This is the Naval Academy. No wait, that's nasal cavity. Its job is to moisturize, warm, and filter the air before it reaches the lungs. In here, you also have three things called turbinate on each side. They look like hot dogs, and they too warm up and humidify the air you breathe and filter particles. I'll squeeze through these and go further. This downward slide is the throat, or pharynx. Let's move down to the larynx. Now, you see that other slide heading in the other direction? That's where your food goes. At the top of the larynx, you have a flap shaped like a leaf. That's the epiglottis. It shuts every time you swallow to prevent food from getting into your lungs. Can you see that triangle-shaped opening? Those are your vocal cords. They vibrate every time you speak and allow different strength and amounts of air to pass through. Now we're heading through the windpipe. It's as long as two golf tees placed on top of each other, but as narrow as the diameter of a quarter. Those bumpy rings that look like tunnels are made of cartilage. It's a strong, flexible tissue that supports the windpipe. Anyway, when you breathe, the windpipe lengthens and widens like a balloon. When you exhale, it goes back to its regular size. The windpipe now divides into two smaller tubes, the bronchi. One bronchus goes right and the other goes left. Oh look, the lungs! Let's see what they look like on the outside. They have a pinkish color and they're made of soft, elastic, and spongy tissue. Each of your lungs is inside a sac of tissue and it's attached to it by a thin layer of liquid, kind of like runny glue. The sac creates a smooth surface to allow your lungs to expand every time you breathe. Your lungs have a different size and shape too. The right lung is shorter than the left because it needs to make room for your liver, but it's also broader than your left lung. On the right, you have three lobes, the upper, middle, and lower ones. On your left, you have only the upper and lower ones. There's a notch in your left lung. That's where your heart peeks through. Hello there. Shy, huh? Right below your lungs, there's a giant muscle, the diaphragm. It acts as a resting spot for your lungs and heart. Around your lungs, you have ribs. Those act as protectors. The enclosed room your lungs live in is called the thorax. Now, let's head inside to see what's going on. The spot where the bronchus begins to enter the lung is called the hilum. And once they get in, they divide even further into the lobes. It's like being inside a tree trunk that divides into millions of smaller branches. Oh, wait a sec. What's happening here? The diaphragm is expanding. Are we getting kicked out? Oh, we're safe. Now, let's take a closer look at the tiny branches. Hold me closer, tiny branches. Okay, this is where we're going. They get so tiny that we can call them bronchioles. They're smaller than a grain of sand. And at the tips of these branches, we got a collection of balloons. Their official name is the alveolar sacs, not to be confused with the alto sacs. At the tips of those sacs, the individual balloons are called the alveoli. That's where the gas exchange happens. Let's go inside to see what's going on. The chamber has a membrane on the outside, some epithelial cells, and on the inside, it has some liquid. Now, up until this point, I have been floating in the air, but now I'm getting my feet wet. The balloon chambers are surrounded by tiny blood vessels called the capillaries. They have very thin walls to allow oxygen molecules to squeeze through. Do you see those tiny blue spots floating in and out of the capillaries? That is carbon dioxide. It travels freely back to the lungs the same way we came in. Oh, by the way, you'll recall that the capillaries and Montagues didn't get along very well in Romeo and Juliet. True. Now that we've passed some tissue, cells, protein, and finally plasma, we need to find transportation. Inside the capillary blood vessel, there's a huge bus. It's called a red blood cell, and it's packed with iron. Almost 70% of the iron in your body is in the red blood cells. It also has 270 million compartments. Those are called the hemoglobin protein molecules, and each of them has 4 seats for 4 oxygen molecules. Once everybody gets on board, we're going for the biggest ride ever. Now we're traveling through the cardiovascular network, a ginormous collection of blood vessels that reach every cell in the body. If we were to stretch all the blood vessels end to end into a straight line, they could circle the Earth more than 2 times. Ooh, did you hear that powerful pumping noise? That's your heart. It's the engine that pushes the oxygen throughout the body and where it needs to go. But you don't get all the oxygen you need from your lungs. The upper layer of your skin cells and the cells in the front surface of your eyes get most of the oxygen from the air. Now we're traveling to the heart and then the largest artery in the body. It's called the aorta, and it's sorta like a giant root that expands throughout the body to generate smaller roots. Then the oxygen goes to the smallest arteries and it travels to the muscles. That's where we get off. The bus allows us to detach from the seats and head over to the muscle cells. And what do we do from now on? Well, that's another video. Bye-bye! We, human beings, have been evolving for 6 million years, but we're still not perfect. Turns out that our bodies have a bunch of design flaws. First of all, human eyes have tiny blind spots, never mind the philosophical ones. Such a spot is about the size of a pinhead. It's located at the point where the optic nerve passes through the surface of the retina at the back of the eye. Your optic nerves connect your eyes to the brain. They carry images for your brain to process. This is how you see. In the spot where these nerves leave your eye, though, there's a lack of something called photoreceptors. These receptors detect light and are the reason you can see. Without them, your eyes wouldn't be able to send any signals to your brain to describe what you're looking at. But because there are no photoreceptors there, you've got a tiny blind spot in each of your eyes. If people were designed perfectly without this flaw, they'd have eyes just like octopuses. It may sound weird, but the eyes of these creatures are eerily similar to humans. But their optic nerves run behind the retina. This means that the nerves don't have to leave the eye at any point, so there's no gap that causes the blind spot in human eyes. What else? Around 65 million Americans complained about having issues with their back, and this is because of evolution. Just like dogs, humans used to walk on all fours. When people were walking on their hands and knees, the curve of their spine was pretty much perfect, and all their organs felt comfortable. Because of this, there was never any pressure on their backs. Well, we evolved to start walking on 2 legs to save energy. The search for food took longer and longer, and when walking on 2 legs, people saved 25% of energy. But this was bad news for people's backs. Because this way, their spines were basically forced to turn into a column to support all the weight and make space for other organs. But if your spine was completely straight, you wouldn't be able to walk on 2 legs. So it evolved to become curved. But this puts a big amount of pressure on your lower back. So basically, to get rid of our pesky back problems, you should start walking on all fours again. That'll work. Make no bones about it, people have too many bones in their feet. We have all these bones because our ape-like ancestors needed them to grab onto tree branches. Now people aren't swinging from trees anymore, but we still have all those bones, which makes us prone to damaging them, and this can be extremely uncomfortable. Think about how many times you've stubbed your toes. If we were designed perfectly, our feet would look like those of an ostrich. These birds have way fewer bones, and the parts that look like knees turned backwards are actually their ankle joints. This makes ostriches less prone to injuries and also helps them run fast. Wow, if people were designed this way, it would make the Olympics way more interesting. I'd sure watch. Now, chew on this one. Human teeth are also far from perfect. People spend so much money on preserving them. At the same time, no other animal has to visit a dentist as we do. Also, once our teeth are permanently damaged or fall out, we can't grow new ones. Sharks are the opposite. They have an endless supply of teeth. In some shark species, a new set of teeth develops every 2 weeks. Kangaroos also have way better teeth than people do. If we were designed perfectly, we'd probably have the same teeth as our bouncing buddies. Once their teeth wear down, they fall out, and their rear teeth migrate forward. That's not the only issue we have with our teeth. Our mouths are way too crowded. Hey, I normally have a foot in mine. In the process of evolution, the human brain grew dramatically, and our jaws had to become wider and shorter to make room for it. But this left almost no room for our wisdom teeth. In the past, wisdom teeth were helpful when people needed to break down food, but as we learned to cook and process food, these teeth weren't needed anymore. So, in short, people should just get rid of them completely. And this may actually be happening. Around 25% of people, mostly Eskimos, are now born without some or all of their 4 wisdom teeth. Now, it happens that our knees are quite impractical too. It's the most complex joint in the body. It's sandwiched between 2 massive levers, which is already pretty risky. The knee only moves forward or backward, which doesn't make it a very secure construction. That's why there's a bunch of rules in many kinds of sports, like soccer or rugby, that forbid hitting an opponent's knee from the side. To make people better suited to their new sporty lifestyle, the hinge-like mechanism of the knee could be replaced with a ball and socket. This would be like the structure you have in your shoulders and hips. Friends, Romans, countrymen, waggle your ears. Yep, like dogs and cats, some humans can waggle their ears. These lucky ones can move their ears independently thanks to special muscles called extrinsic ear muscles, but those serve literally no purpose, apart from providing a cool party trick. Speaking of design flaws, human voice boxes are in the completely wrong place. Your windpipe, thanks to which you can breathe, and your food pipe, which is, you guessed it, where the food goes, open into the same space. This space extends from your nose and mouth down to your voice box. You have a little leaf-shaped flap that covers the opening to your voice box whenever you swallow. It prevents food from going into your windpipe. But this mechanism isn't always fast enough. If you're talking while eating, it's incredibly easy for the food to slip down and accidentally go into your airway, and you definitely don't want that. The whale's voice box is designed much more wisely. It's located in its blowhole, away from its mouth. If people could move their voice box into their nose, they would have 2 separate tubes, and there would be no risk of choking. But there would be a downside. We wouldn't be able to talk. But we could communicate through singing instead, like our whale friends. We'd be able to do this by producing vibrations in our noses.
Kinda like this. Don't I sound better? Hey, leave me a comment below.
You like ribs? I love them. But we're not talking about those kind of ribs. Some of us humans have an extra 13th set of ribs. Between 1 and 3% of the world's population have these ribs, called cervical, and they serve absolutely no purpose. Some people have just one of such ribs on the left side or the right side of their body, and others have cervical ribs on both sides. Now, you don't really need your appendix. It may contain some useful bacteria to help when you have stomach issues, but apart from that, it's not really necessary. The worst thing is that the appendix can get easily inflamed. The appendix was originally designed to help people digest cellulose, which is found in most green plants. This was back when people's diet mainly consisted of plants and almost no animal food. So, I say, let's get rid of it. Moving on. Blood is delivered from your heart to all the tissues of your body through thin pipes called arteries. The blood flows into each of your arms and legs through one large artery. For your arms, this artery is located at the biceps, and for your legs, it's in the front of the thigh. But your back needs blood too. And still, instead of having a large artery at the back of your body, you have smaller ones branching out and bundling around your bones and nerves. This is really impractical and makes people pretty susceptible to glitches, which is why you often get numb arms or legs. Bummer. How about something humorous? Take a look at your elbow. There, a branch of the artery meets up with something called the ulnar nerve. Thanks to this, you can move your pinky fingers. This is also why, when you bang your funny or humorous bone, your arm goes all numb and tingly. Ow. To fix this, we really need one more large artery in the back of our body near the shoulder blades. This extra pipe would provide the blood with a more direct route. This would also stop your arms and legs from going numb when you bump them in the wrong place. Finally, there's this tail. People still have a tailbone, even though there's no tail in sight. For our ape-like ancestors, the tail was incredibly helpful. They used it to balance themselves while jumping from one high branch to another. Now that we live in actual houses, most of us don't swing through trees anymore. The tailbone, whose official name is the coccyx, is easily fractured, so currently it's just a design flaw. Researchers also claim that removing it would improve posture issues too.
Most people have 12 pairs of rib bones, which means 24 ribs in total. But some have 25. 1 in 200 people is born with the so-called cervical rib. It forms right above the first rib and grows at the base of a person's neck, above the collarbone. A cervical rib can be located on the left, right, or both sides. You can have it without even knowing about it. This extra rib doesn't necessarily form completely. It can be just a thin strand of tissue fibers, not even an X-ray can see. In most cases, it's really not a big deal, unless it starts putting pressure on nerves and blood vessels. You probably don't think that much when you're filling out a form and come across the eye color section. But it's not that simple for people who have this rare body feature called heterochromia. That's when a person has a difference in eye color. Complete heterochromia means you have 2 different colored eyes, like one blue and one brown eye. But there's also partial heterochromia. It means only a part of your iris is a different color from the rest. In the US, fewer than 200,000 people have it. Natural red hair is not as common as you might think. Only 2% of the world's population has it. There are 8 genes responsible for it. Scientists used to link it with just one rare and recessive gene, MC1R, that you had to inherit in 2 versions from both of your parents. Then, they realized not every person with 2 red-haired versions got red hair. So, there have to be some other genes involved. Do you know which eye color is super rare? Gray. Most people have either brown, blue, or hazel eyes. About 17% of people have blue eyes, but the odds of getting those and red hair at the same time are just around 0.17%. Less than 1% have gray eyes. If you have gray eyes, it's because of a low level of melanin in the front layer of your iris. There are just 43 people in the world that have this extremely rare body feature called golden blood. About 0.6% of Americans are AB negative, but this is still not the rarest type in the world. In 1961, scientists discovered there's an indigenous Australian with a specific blood type, the type that completely lacks certain antigens, Rh, which means proteins or red blood cells. Those who have that exclusive type can donate to others with rare blood types, but can receive it only from one of those other 40-ish people who have it. That's why it's golden blood. It's worth its weight in gold. Another rare body feature is a small hole near the ear, pre-auricular pit. At first, it seems like some sort of a gill. Some scientists have a theory it could be some sort of evolutionary remains from times when we were aquatic creatures. This tiny hole is mostly present near one ear, not both. Some people have chimp-like feet. They're bendy, flexible, and adapted for climbing trees. Researchers at Boston University filmed 400 people walking barefoot and concluded that 1 in 13, or 8% of the participants, had this feature. Typically, the human foot is rigid. We've evolved that way so we can efficiently walk on even terrains. At least, that's something you could learn from textbooks. But other apes have flexible feet. This allows them to grasp branches as they move through the trees. The kind of foot that's similar to tree-dwelling apes is flexible at the middle. It bends at the ball of the foot and is halfway between the ball and the heel. Human feet normally have a joint at this point, but the majority of people have stiff ligaments that span the joint. That's how they keep it rigid. Those rare people with chimp-like feet have softer ligaments that allow their midfoot to bend. Try to move your middle finger or your pinky. It's hard to do without bending your ring finger, right? Well, that's how it works for most people. But there are some who can completely isolate their ring finger. Researchers believe it's hereditary. If you can touch your nose or chin with your tongue, it means you stand with around 5% of the world's population that can do that. Most people's tongues won't reach that far out, no matter how hard they try. Some women have super color vision. With this, you're able to see and distinguish colors thanks to special cells in your eyes called cones. People usually have 3 types of cones, but scientists are especially interested in tetrachromats. They believe these people have 4 types of cones. Thanks to that, they're able to see 100 million different colors. One research team from Newcastle University spent years searching for such people. Finally, in 2010, they found one of them. It sounds like a magic power at first, but it's not always fun. One tetrachromat said going to the grocery store can be a real nightmare because it's like seeing a trash pile of colors coming in at every angle. There are people born with a double row of eyelashes, a condition known as dystichiasis. That extra row emerges from the ducts of meibomian glands. One of the celebrity examples for such a rare genetic mutation was Elizabeth Taylor. Here's something you can try. Move your right foot off the ground. Go in a clockwise direction. Can you draw the number 6 with your big toe? No pencil or paper allowed, just your toe. The majority of people will soon notice they've started moving their foot in the opposite direction without even realizing it. This partially happens because the number features a counterclockwise circle. Only in some rare cases, when either the brain is wired in a different way or, thanks to practicing, can some people do it the other way around. You've probably also heard that myth that it's not possible to sneeze with your eyes open. Well, it is. There are cranial nerves that link your eyes and your nose. That's the reason why, when sneezing, most people automatically close their eyes. But it's still possible to sneeze with your eyes open, and nope, your eyes won't pop out because of it. There are people who can make a roaring noise in their heads. All they have to do is tense their ears or jaws. We all have this small muscle in our ear, the tensor tympani. Its role is to silence certain sounds that can really distract you. For example, when you're chewing. And some have the ability to flex that tiny muscle. That way, they create an audible rumble, like there's a small lion roaring inside their head. Can you bend your thumb backward? If so, you must have something called hitchhiker's thumb. It's a double-jointed thumb that allows them to bend it backwards. There's no risk in doing this, and it's not something very uncomfortable for them. It's possible thanks to distal joints within the thumb. In some cases, people can move only one thumb backward, while others can move both. There's a rare body feature that turns some people into super tasters. Genetics plays a role in many things, including our taste buds. Approximately 25% of the world's population is in the category of super tasters. Compared to regular tasters, they have more visible tiny dots on their tongue, called taste papillae. It makes them more sensitive to certain tastes, like those that are sweet, bitter, and salty. They have more pain receptors than average, which is why they're not that into spicy food. Also, they most likely won't eat that many vegetables, since the taste will be too bitter to them. Wisdom teeth used to be important once, and we don't quite need them anymore, but their absence is actually a pretty rare body feature. These days, when wisdom teeth, also known as third molars, try to break through the gums, in many cases, they run out of space. As a result, it can get overcrowded inside your mouth. So many people have to get rid of those extra teeth. About 5 million people every year to be precise. Synesthesia is the phenomenon when a brain mixes up certain senses. So, a person with synesthesia is able to taste music or hear colors. People say Mozart had it. For instance, he'd see D major as a warm orangey sound and B flat minor as blackish. This condition is rare. Approximately 1 in 2,000 people have it, and the majority of those are left-handed or women. Imagine you can recall what you were having for breakfast 15 years ago, like it was yesterday. Sure, you keep some special memories, but there are people that can recall everything that has happened to them till now, as clearly as they recall things from this morning. If you give them a certain date, they'll be able to tell you what they did and where they were in the slightest detail. It's called highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM, or hyperthymesia, and only 60 people on the planet have it. You wake up one morning, and while you're brushing your teeth, you notice a lump on the inside of your mouth, under your tongue. Immediately, you're concerned. You've never noticed this before? But not to worry. It's just torus mandibularis, a simple bony growth on the mandible of your mouth. If you have this extra bit of bone, you are part of the 40% of people with this anomaly. Although it can be more common depending on where you're from. For example, in the USA, this only occurs in 10% of the population. Bones are significant pieces within our bodies. We have 206 of them altogether. But some people may have an extra bone that they weren't expecting. We all have 12 pairs of ribs, equaling to 24 in total. However, 0.5% of people may have 25. The 25th is known as a cervical rib. Present from birth, it grows from the base of the neck, just above the collarbone. It can be on either side, as a fully formed rib, or just a thin strand of tissue fibers. There are some parts of our body that have remained with us throughout our evolution as a species, and some of us no longer share that same physical trait. The palmaris longus is a small tendon located in your wrist. By pressing the pads of your fourth finger and thumb, then clenching your wrist, the inside of your wrist will show the palmaris longus popping out. If this isn't visible, then you are part of a relatively small percentage that no longer possesses it. Lacking it has no effects on the strength of your grip, but being absent does give a decreased pinch strength in the fourth and fifth finger. It's believed that this muscle was actively used sometime in the evolutionary process of our species. It hasn't affected our bodies in any way, and it's merely a trait that some of us continue to have. It's also not dependent on either hand, regardless of which hand is dominant. Which hand do you use more often? If you're left-handed, you're part of the 10% club. And if you're ambidextrous, you're within the 1% to use both of your hands dominantly. Most ambidextrous people initially only use their left hand. Ambidexterity and left-handedness share the indication that they are using both sides of the brain. Right-handed people are generally dominant only to the left side of the brain. We all have tailbones, a reminder of our long story of evolution. We stopped using our tails around 25 million years ago. Although, while we are still growing as embryos, we go through the process of growing a tail, and after about 8 weeks, we lose it completely. There are some cases of humans being born with a tail. There are about 25 confirmed cases known to scientists. Those born with tails, though, won't have any real benefit, other than what the tailbone does for balance anyway. The tails have no function other than physically being there, as they have no bones. The tails only consist of nerves, vessels, and muscles. Do you find that you are a picky eater? Do you think that coriander tastes like soap? Or you can't stand pineapple on pizza? This may be due to what kind of taster you are. Up to 30% of people are considered super tasters and will experience different levels of enjoyment or disappointment from their foods. Food that is bitter to the super taster will likely be sweet to average tasters, who make up 40% of people. There are also 30% of people who are non-tasters and won't find anything too exciting. Do you have the ability to identify musical notes? About 1 in 10,000 people can flawlessly distinguish perfect pitch naturally. Although this doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the next big pop star. They're just able to easily identify a specific musical note upon listening to it. Our eye colors are so diverse. The difference in light exposure to eyes throughout the world determines how much melanin is produced, which helps create many different shades of color. Since migration has become more common over the past 100 years, the variations of shades of color are numerous. Your genes, of course, also playing a huge part. We could list hundreds of different shades of eye color to show how many variations there are, but we'll limit the distinct categories down to 6 main color groups to keep this brief. The vast majority of people have brown eyes. About 79% of the world's population share this eye color. Once, all humans only had the brown pigmentation, until around 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, when humans migrated to Northern Europe. A mutation occurred, helping the eyes to adapt to the change of light. Blue eyes became the most common of the mutated coloration, and all of them today can be traced back to one ancestor from Europe. Today, blue eyes make up around 10% of the human population. Amber and hazel eyes each take up 5% respectively. Gray eyes are up to 3%, and the rarest of eye colors are green ones, consisting of only 2%. Rarer still is heterochromia iridum, where both eyes are of different colors. It's inherited and also affected by other genetic factors. Only 1% of the human population have this incredibly rare attribute. Although blue eyes have become more common, they're only more prominent within areas where people contribute similar variants of genes, since blue eyes are a recessive trait. Just like red hair, which only occurs within up to 2% of the population. If you have red hair and blue eyes, you will be part of the smallest percentile for hair and eye variety that makes up only 0.17% of the human population. Although green, gray, and hazel eyes are less abundant than blue, their genes are more dominant. So, within the small pool of redheads, blue eyes are less likely to occur. The melanin that has helped mutate eye colors can also have other effects on the human body. A genetic mutation that affects the melanin occurs in 0.005% of people in the USA, creating albinism. The occurrence differs in many ways throughout the world, the same as the effects with eyes. In albinism, the pigment production is altered to distribute major cells that affect the coloring of the skin, the hair, and the eyes. Most people with albinism will have snow white skin, snow white hair, and their eyes are a pale blue pinkish color, the pupil itself being red. The redness comes from the light reflecting off the vessels in the retina. There is another form of albinism which has a smaller amount of pigmentation, and the shade of skin and hair are slightly darker. Albinism occurs not only in humans, but practically all mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Do you have a small hole at the front of your ear above the ear canal? This is the preauricular pit. During the first 6 weeks of a child's development, long before being born, the auricle, which is the external part of your ear, will develop. The preauricular pit forms when the auricle doesn't fully fuse. This occurs within less than 1% of humans. Although there's speculation that having this little hole is the remnant of gills that we once had from our seafaring ancestors, there's nothing solid to confirm this theory. There are some unique things we have that give us an advantage in everyday life. Some people carry a gene mutation of the DEC2 gene, also known in proper English as familial natural short sleepers. Essentially, it means people within this 1% only require about 6 hours of sleep each day. Most people will probably feel burned out after a day of this, but those lucky enough to be within this 1% will be sure to make the most out of their day. Have you ever looked at a picture and noticed that the color of something was different to what someone else can see? It may be that you have a rare ability to see more colors than everyone else, possibly seeing 100 million different kinds of shades. If you do, you're part of the rare group of people called tetrachromats, who have 4 cone cells in their eyes, unlike everyone else who has 3, and are identified as a trichromat. Studies are varied on who is part of this rare ocular phenomenon, though it's more prominent in females. It's suggested that up to 15% of women have this rare capability. Incredibly, it's an ability also shared with some species of birds, insects, fish, and other mammals. The cornea is the only part of your body with living cells that doesn't have blood vessels. It gets nutrients and oxygen directly from the tear fluid on the outside, and the thick watery substance you have between the cornea on the inside, and also from the nerve fibers connected to the cornea. That's why contact lenses used to be a potential issue. The older ones were reducing oxygen supply, since the cornea mostly gets oxygen from the outside. This problem was solved, or at least reduced, when silicone hydrogel lenses came to the market. Some other parts of your body with no blood vessels are your nails, hair, outer skin layers, and tooth enamel. Did you notice your sweat sometimes smells of onions after your workout? You have nothing to worry about. There are 2 types of sweat glands in your skin. The first kind of glands are located on certain areas of your body, like the groin region and the armpits. They produce a specific oily fluid, which is a response to certain emotional experiences. Another type of sweat gland is way more common. They're distributed all over your body and are responsible for the specific sweat you get after the workout. The sweat cools your body down as it evaporates from your skin. It's 99% water, so it's practically odorless. Well, at least when it first leaves the pores and comes to the surface of your skin. But there are many types of bacteria on the human skin, and they feed on the nutrients in that sweat, together with skin flakes. One of the byproducts of this is specific chemicals, and their smell can sometimes strongly remind you of onion. You may have noticed you produce more saliva when you go for a run, especially if it's a short jog in cold weather. But if you're running a marathon and it's a nice warm day outside, you'll produce less saliva. It's your body trying to offset the drying effect, since you breathe through your mouth way more. But your body becomes more dehydrated over longer periods, which is why it's trying to conserve water by reducing saliva production. Every training you do, no matter how intensive it is, also makes you secrete more of a specific type of protein. It makes the saliva more viscous and sticky, which is why you may feel like your mouth is dry way more after your workout. Humans see the world 15 seconds out of date, which means your brain constantly keeps you a little bit in the past. This way, it helps you stabilize your vision of the world around you. Your eyes receive a huge amount of visual information. Yep, literally millions of colors, shapes, and ever-changing motion wherever you turn. It's not an easy task for your brain to process all that. The visual world alters all the time because of changes in viewpoint, light, and the rest of the outer factors. Your visual input changes because you need to blink. Plus, your head, eyes, and your entire body are always in some sort of motion. Your brain has to establish a mechanism that can create illusory stability. It automatically smooths your visual input. It doesn't analyze every little visual snapshot. It's like a time machine. You actually perceive an average of things you saw in the past 15 seconds at any given moment. The brain pulls together objects so they appear more similar to each other. That's why it tricks you into believing you're in stable surroundings. If your brain kept you updated in real time, the world would feel like a very, very chaotic place with constant changes in movement, light, and shadow, which would probably feel like you were hallucinating all the time. Your bones are really strong, but your teeth, which we also consider as part of the skeletal system, are even stronger. That's because of the enamel, the hard outer layer of your tooth. The enamel keeps the tissue and the delicate nerves inside your teeth safe. You're basically burning calories while you're thinking. When you rest and don't engage in any particular activity except for the basics, which includes digesting, breathing, and keeping yourself warm, it's the stage where your brain uses up to 20 to 25% of the total energy of your body. That means your body will burn around 350 to 450 calories per day while pretty much doing nothing. We're not the only ones in the animal kingdom with such a mechanism. Some small mammals like the minuscule pygmy marmoset and the tiny tree shrew devote the same percentage of their total body energy to their brain. Most of the energy the brain burns is to help its cells, the neurons, to communicate with each other. They do it via chemical signals the brain transmits across synapses, those special cell structures. So, the brain directs a lot of energy towards synapses in order to make them work. Your brain never really rests. Even when you're sleeping, certain parts are active. So, your brain needs its fuel to work, and you're basically burning calories in your sleep. The more demanding mental tasks you take throughout the day, the more calories you burn. So, if you skip today's workout, solve some Sudoku. Do you like to rush with your ice cream? Sometimes it pays off, but if you do it often, you must know the feeling of brain freeze pretty well. It's a pretty intense and uncomfortable feeling that comes from the front or sides of your head right after you drink or eat something cold, such as a slushy drink, ice cream, or an ice pop. Some people even go through a similar sensation whenever they're exposed to cold air. Scientists are still not sure exactly why this happens, but one of the theories is the cold substance stimulates a cluster of nerves located at the back of the palate. Another theory says the blood vessels in the roof of the mouth and sinuses quickly constrict because the temperature in your mouth drops before they dilate again. Brain freeze is not something dangerous that you should be seriously worried about. And no, hanging over the table, groaning, or clasping your head in your hands won't help much. Some people like to sleep a lot. Hey, guilty as charged. But some have a certain condition called familiar natural short sleepers, which means they're kind of immune to sleep deprivation. About 1% of our population has it. They can fall short on sleep and feel pretty good about it. They're fine with sleeping for 6 hours per night. This amount would wreck the majority of people after a couple of nights. The human eye normally has 3 cones. That means we can recognize approximately 1 million different shades in the green, red, and blue spectrums of colors. But there are some people with a rare condition, so-called tetrachromats, that have 4 cones in their eyes. This allows them to see ultraviolet shades, which means they can distinguish 100 million distinct colors. Did you know your skeleton is all wet? I mean, your entire body mostly consists of water, up to 60%. That fluid is not only in your organs, muscles, and skin, it's in your skeleton too. Your bone mass is almost 1/3 water. There's this amazing hidden network a human body holds inside. Blood vessels are really small, but if you could line them all up, you'd get something huge. Your entire body boasts a network of 60,000 miles of blood vessels. One of the ways to keep your network healthy is by eating right. Have you ever wondered why our distant relatives, the primates, are so much stronger than us? In many ways, our bodies are very similar. Look at the chimp's muscle structure, for example. But our closest primate relatives are approximately 1.35 times stronger than us. The human body developed more slow-twitch muscle fibers compared to the rest of the primates. This type of muscle fiber is a less powerful one, but it lets us endure more than other primates and do things like foraging and hunting, activities that helped our distant ancestors to survive. That's also the reason why we can run a marathon. A monkey could never do it. But we'd still lose in a strength competition. Laughter is contagious. It's not just a metaphor. Researchers have found that strong emotions can make the brain activity of different people sync. Laughter is something science usually links with social creatures. people are almost 30 times more likely to laugh when in some social situations, hanging out with their friends or people they feel relaxed with. One of the theories says that you're probably going to join when you see your friend laughing because humans are empathetic beings. Your brain will release endorphins when you're laughing. These are special chemicals that make you feel safe and at ease. So we're not sure why exactly our laughter is contagious, but it feels really good, so...
So, when someone is lying, their nose gives it away. And no, it does not grow longer. You haven't seen mine. It turns out that when a person lies, the temperature around their nose, as well as the inner corners of their eyes, rises. So, imagine you're on a first date, and the person tells you something hard to believe. You whip out your thermometer and take the temperature of their nose. Then they take your temperature, and back and forth it goes all night long. Actually, there are better things to do, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. Women's hearts beat faster than men's. The average male's heart rate is between 70 and 72 beats per minute. At the same time, the average for women is between 78 and 82 beats. This is because women's hearts are generally smaller than men's. The female heart pumps less blood with each beat, so it needs to work a little harder to keep up with the male's. Your lungs are one of the largest organs in your body. Their total surface area is almost the same as a tennis court. And the total length of the airways running through them is similar to the distance from Chicago to Las Vegas. And all this manages to fit inside your body. Now, nerve impulses your brain sends travels at a speed of around 170 miles per hour. That's as fast as a high-speed train. The amount of food consumed by the average human in their lifetime weighs as much as 8 Asian elephants. It's unsurprising that we spend around 4 years of our life eating. Ooh, tongue twister. 8 Asian elephants, 8 Asian elephants. Now, we shed our skin as it's actually food for fungi, bacteria, and other stuff we definitely want to stay away from. We get rid of around 600,000 particles of skin every hour. That's why they call me Dusty. Your eyes get their color from a pigment called melanin. Brown-eyed people have more melanin than those with green eyes. The blood in your body travels 4 miles per hour, and it reaches your brain in just a few seconds. Some people can hear the sounds of their eyeballs moving. Ooh. It's a rare condition called canal dehiscence syndrome. It causes every single sound inside the body to be amplified. One man described it as hearing his eyes scratching like sandpaper every time they moved in their sockets. Wow. Then I guess watching a tennis match must get really loud. When you see a person smiling at you, you know how it feels, which can make you do the same. The same is with yawning. It's also some sort of unconscious way our brain makes social bonds with others that are yawning. Wisdom teeth used to have an important role. They were the third set of molars we used to mash meat and other firm food in our mouths. When our brains got bigger and we started eating softer food, jawbone structure changed, which means we didn't need wisdom teeth anymore. And that's why we've dumbed down. Nah, that's not why. When you're awake, your brain produces electricity. The actual amount is between 15 to 25 watts. That's enough to power an LED light. The electricity comes from the brain delivering millions of messages around the body every single second. These messages are how your brain tells your arms to move, for example. Think of your body as a super speedy highway for electrical signals. Your teeth are the only part of your body that can't repair itself. That's why dentists were created. But the enamel they're covered with is one of the toughest things in the human body. Now, scientists have noticed that people with bigger pupils are better at problem solving. Bigger pupilled individuals, yes, that is a legit word, can also focus better and ignore distractions, huh? Even their memory is sharper. We don't know the reasons for the phenomenon yet, but many people think it's because the pupil is linked to a spot in the brain that initiates your mental abilities. What? Humans can use echolocation just like whales or bats. Some blind people can get information about their surroundings in some sort of flashes in 3D perspective, and have a strong sense of texture and density. They get information with sound waves. Our brains process those differently than light waves. Echolocation uses certain brain parts sighted people use for vision. Your skeletal cells never stop regenerating. That's why you get a new skeleton every 10 years or so. This process slows down with age, and the regeneration takes longer. That's one of the main reasons why bones become thinner. You must have heard of snakes shedding their skin. But humans do it too. Your skin's outer layer sheds every 2 to 4 weeks. That adds up to roughly 2 pounds of skin every year. That's the same weight as that of a pineapple. Ew. The enamel of our teeth is the hardest substance in the human body. 96% of it consists of minerals. Now, you'd have to stand for way more than 2 hours to burn the same amount of energy as you do in just 30 minutes of walking. The cornea of your eye is the only part of your body with no blood flow at all. It only gets oxygen. Your tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. The tongue is connected to the hyoid bone on one end, which is part of the neck, but there's nothing on the other side. Your sense of smell is the only one that goes directly to the part of the brain that controls your emotions and memories. Did I mention your pancreas? Your pancreas contains taste receptor cells that allow it to detect not only sugar but artificial sweeteners too. It uses the taste data to balance out hormones. Somebody actually counted this, and you swallow 600 times a day, once every minute when you're awake, and around 3 times per hour while sleeping. The average person has 10,000 taste buds. But as they get older, some taste buds are not replaced. An older person may have just 5,000 working buds, so they have to work harder or something. Eventually, human body hair may disappear. It used to protect us from severe weather conditions, but now we have clothes and umbrellas to do that. Most hair on the human body no longer serves any function. That's excluding our eyebrows and eyelashes, which protect our eyes from sweat and other nasty things dripping in. By the way, we're already halfway to losing all our hair. Humans used to be completely covered in it, which made us look as furry as gorillas. You have 5 million hair follicles on your body, and only 100,000 of them on your head. Hair grows half an inch every month, so a 70-year-old person that never got a haircut would have hair as long as a telephone pole. There's a newly discovered type of brain cells crucial for visual search. They're called target cells. Without their help, you wouldn't be able to spot an acquaintance in a crowd or your dog in the park. Interestingly, target cells don't care what the thing you're searching for looks like. All they want to know is whether an object is your target or not. You have around 3 million sweat glands in your body. Many of them are on the soles of your feet and on your palms, forehead, armpits, and cheeks. You get red eyes in photos because when the camera flash goes off, your pupils don't have enough time to constrict. A large burst of light reaches your retina and it bounces back. Food doesn't need gravity to get to your stomach. Your muscles constrict and relax to push it down. But birds need gravity to swallow. Unlike most other animals, we're walking on 2 legs, so we needed extra protection for the head directly exposed to the sun. That's why we have head hair. It also helps us retain heat at night. Our brain may not be big compared to the rest of the body, but it's always active, which produces heat, so the head hair insulates that area. When you blink, you're giving your brain a chance to do a micro nap and recharge. You blink between 20 to 30,000 times a day, which means you walk around with closed eyes around 10% of your waking hours. Your hair knows when you sleep. There are genes that regulate your body clock, and they're placed in the cells of hair follicles. That means scientists can tell if you're a morning bird or a late owl studying your hair. Your nails grow faster today than before. Studies from the 50s and the 70s say nails were growing slower, almost a quarter. Scientists believe it's because we eat more proteins these days, or we're just not chewing them as much.
Your body actually glows. It emits a super faint light that's at its strongest at around 3 to 4 p.m. The sad news is that this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even our closest genetic relatives, gorillas and chimps, lack this small piece of bone that extends forward from the jaw. Their lower jaws slant down and back from their front teeth. Scientists still haven't figured out this mystery. The opinions about why people are made this way differ. Some researchers think chins help us chew our food. Others are sure they have something to do with speaking. A few of us think it's simply a special place to grow a goatee. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%, but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously, for example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually, when animals mimic each other, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or your stomach acid breaks down the foods you eat and turns them into easy-to-digest particles. It also stops nasty pathogens and microbes that could make you sick. In fact, your stomach acid is so strong that it can even dissolve bone and metal. Don't start munching down on your soda cans, though. That's probably not going to end well. Your brain has more than 86 billion nerve cells. They're all joined together by 100 trillion connections. That's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a good chance you can guess someone's name based on how they look. Researchers showed portrait photos to a group of people, with 4 names written below. They were asked to choose the right name for this or that person. The law of chance says you'll guess it 25% of the time, but in this research, people got the names correct at a rate of 25 to 40%, and there were more than 94,000 faces shown. Let's say a man is called Bob. People will expect for him to have a rounder face than Tim. They expect Bob to be more jolly and ready to hang out with people. It has to affect his facial appearance in some way. A woman called Catherine can be considered more serious, studious, and concentrated. That could eventually influence her facial muscles as well. When ancient Romans flexed their biceps, they thought their muscles looked like mice. That's why the word muscle translates as little mouse in Latin. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Experts used to think that we can only distinguish 10,000 smells. In fact, a recent study found human beings can recognize 1 trillion smells. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So come on, dude, chill out, okay? Some scientists think that the purpose of fingerprints is a better grip, but others believe they're there to help wick water off them and allow the skin to stretch when needed to protect it from damage. There's also a theory saying that fingerprints improve the sense of touch. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. The biggest molecule in the human body is the chromosome 1. A human cell has 23 chromosome pairs, and each chromosome 1 is made of 10 billion atoms. You inhale 25 sextillion molecules in just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. When you're walking faster, at some point, you'll feel the natural urge to start jogging. Your body wants to have a stable state, whether you're running or walking. So, if you're walking fast, it will unconsciously force you to start running. One theory is, we use more energy when walking faster than running. So that's one of the ways the body saves energy. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch, and your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. The fattiest organ in your body is your brain. Fat makes up at least 60% of its dry weight. This quality got the brain to the Guinness World Records. The organ contains around 25% of your body's cholesterol, which is vital for the brain's well-being. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Your fingernails grow twice as fast as your toenails. It would take 15.5 months for your toenails to grow 1 inch, but only 7 months for your fingernails to get this long. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The vessels in your body are long enough to circle the earth twice or more. The idea that we use only 10% of our brains is a myth. At any given time, you use almost 100%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perform simple tasks, like drink a cup of coffee. More than 70% of your brain consists of water, and it needs 20% of your body's oxygen supply. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. The body of a 110-pound person contains 40 tablespoons of salt. If you ironed out all the wrinkles in your brain and laid it flat, it would be the size of a pillowcase. The brain wrinkles as there's not a lot of room in the skull, so it folds over itself as it grows. By the way, don't do that pillowcase thing with your brain. Trust me on this one. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're asleep. But don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. You produce around 85,000 pints of spit in your lifetime. That's enough saliva to fill around 500 bathtubs. Enough said. The highest blood flow isn't actually in your heart, and it's not in your brain either. It's in your kidneys. It's super hard for us to grasp just how small an atom is. But think of it this way. Your body is made up of a staggering 7 octillion atoms. Yeah, doesn't that look like a 7 being chased by a whole mob of zeros? For adults, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper does the passage split into the esophagus, for food and liquid, and the trachea, for air. When you swallow, your airway gets automatically closed off. This prevents you from accidentally inhaling food, but occasionally it still happens. There's a name for the growling sound that your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called borborygmi. It takes 6 to 8 hours for food to travel through your stomach and small intestine. That's because your body is trying to absorb all its nutrients. The idea that the tongue has flavor zones is a myth. All taste buds can detect 5 tastes, but some receptors are more responsive than others. Human beings are the only animals that willingly delay sleep. Just make sure you get enough.
Okay, look at yourself in the mirror. Yeah, right in the eye. See that little fold of tissue in the inner corner of both of your eyes? Well, get ready for this. It was actually once a third eyelid, or nictitating membrane. You can see it today in snakes or lizards, for example. The third eyelid was used for the same purpose as the other 2, although it's unclear whether humans ever even had it fully grown. This membrane wasn't as thick as the 2 eyelids we have, and it could moisten the eye without obstructing the view. Right now, all we have left of it is this tiny fold in the corner of the eye, and most likely in the future we will lose it altogether. And maybe we'll finally stop waking up with that yucky crust that forms in our eyes overnight. Now, while you're still in front of the mirror, look lower, lower, and lower still. Yeah, those are your toes. Say hello and goodbye. Scientists believe that, in some more or less distant future, we'll get rid of our toes completely. Our ancestors, the ancient primates, needed toes to climb trees more efficiently. They used both their hands and feet to grab tree branches. You can see it today in most monkeys and apes. They have longer and more flexible toes, along with flappier feet that allow them to get a hang on branches. Their feet mobility also lets them grab objects from the ground if necessary. For us humans, even lifting a pen we dropped on the floor with our toes is a complex task, but not for our primate relatives. Humans have evolved along a different route. We started walking upright and climbed down from trees, making rigid feet and shorter toes more of a necessity over time. Today, we still use our toes for balance when rolling from the balls of our feet to the tips of the toes, but our balance is now much more centered. It first moved towards our inner feet, which resulted in our pinky toes becoming so tiny, and the big toes, well, so big. As the balance moves away from the toes entirely, though, they are more likely to get fused together in the future. Now, turn around and look at your gorgeous behind. If you've ever fallen off a skateboard or slipped on an icy patch, you must remember what a terrible thing it is to hit that tailbone on a hard surface. Luckily for us, scientists predict it's going to go away pretty soon in the course of evolution. A tailbone is a feature that was left to us by our primate ancestors too. And yet again, they needed their tails to achieve more mobility among tree branches, using them to fling themselves from tree to tree. It's hard to say when humans drop the tail to never pick it back up, but facts are facts. The only thing we have reminding us of those glorious tree-jumping days is the pretty useless bone at the lower end of our backs. Okay, back to the face now. Open your mouth and say, "Ah." If you're a lucky individual to have no wisdom teeth, then you can be proud knowing that you're a product of evolution going strong. As you might know, teeth are the only part of the human body that doesn't repair itself. So if you lost all your teeth back in the dark times with no dentists around, the only choice you had was to eat liquid food. Not cool. Dentists believe that nature gave us wisdom teeth as a replacement for old, worn-out teeth we've had since childhood. That's why they grow so late in our lives. Today, though, with all the progress dentistry has gone through, we tend to keep all or most of our teeth intact until a very old age. And even if we lose some, we can always replace them with new ones. That makes wisdom teeth a vestigial thing. And they seem to understand that, since more and more people never have to go through the ordeal of teething as grown-ups. Speaking of teeth, our entire jaw has been changing for the past, 10,000 years, and is predicted to change even more quite soon. In fact, it's been the fastest changer of all our body parts. Back in the day, when early humans survived by hunting and gathering, they needed massive, powerful jaws and bigger teeth to chew through raw meat and grind plants. As they came to cooking and then farming, their food became less tough, and so their jaws became smaller to fit the current needs. As time went by, our jaws shrank more and more, and they're likely to continue doing so in the future. With lots of processed foods that don't need much chewing, humans of the future are probably going to have more delicate facial features with thin jaw lines and smooth cheekbones. Some body parts are not going away, but making a comeback instead. 100 years ago, fibula, a tiny bone in the back of the knee, was only present in around 11% of people, and scientists thought it would disappear entirely pretty soon. But, against all odds, the brave little bone has made it into the knees of a whopping 39% of modern people. It's still unknown why exactly the fibula returned, but the most popular opinion is that we've grown taller and heavier than our ancestors. That much is true. As our diet became better and more nutritious, we learned to live longer and grow taller. We're now probably at the peak of our evolutionary height. And the fibula might have appeared in our bodies to provide a smooth surface for the tendon behind the knee to slide on, reducing friction and lowering the chances of damage because of wear and tear. Speaking of becoming bigger, let's get you back to that mirror, shall we? Flex a little bit. Ooh, nice biceps there. But unfortunately, not as nice as your ancient ancestors were. Not everything about evolution is 100% good for us. It's just a set of features that adapted best. And that's the case with our muscles. They've grown smaller and weaker with time, especially in our upper bodies. In ancient times, humans needed big and strong muscles to do a lot of handiwork. From hunting and schlepping their catch home to crafting tools and building shelters. Later, it didn't grow easier, much the opposite. In fact, plowing fields and building complex structures required a lot of physical strength and endurance. But as the technological progress started booming, physical capabilities gave way to brain power. And machines began doing a lot of work for us, most of it even better than us. We shifted more towards sedentary lifestyle, spending more and more time in front of computers. And our muscles have been growing steadily smaller, because we simply don't need them as much anymore. It's highly likely that as the progress goes further, we'll become much slenderer and have more trouble gaining muscle mass. Our brain is of particular interest because it's been changing in a kind of a strange pattern. Our distant ancestors had a rather small brain at first, but the close relatives of humans, the Neanderthals, obtained a larger brain than the average modern human has. In the course of evolution, human brain grew larger. But in the more recent centuries, it started shrinking, and no one knows exactly why. Some experts say it might have to do with the change of our lifestyle and social connections. Early humans, especially hunter-gatherers, had to remember every plant and animal they saw, their properties, and how to use this or that thing. They were more generalist, having to learn everything their parents knew and find out more on their own. The modern human is more specialized in a certain area, delving deeper into some narrow subject while relying on their peers for the rest. Where ancient humans worked in groups in which anyone could potentially replace anyone else, we gather in teams, where each member has their own specific task and is irreplaceable. Still, brain size doesn't seem to matter that much, because orcas and elephants, for example, have bigger brains than us, which doesn't make them more intelligent. Happier? I'm guessing yes. And if we venture further into the unknown, meaning millennia from today, we might even develop some pretty unbelievable traits. Some go as far as to say that if the tendency for the sea levels to rise persists, humans might adapt to living in water. We might evolve to have webbed hands and feet to swim better, and develop gills to be able to breathe underwater. Or, if we go into space and start colonizing other planets, we will inevitably have to adapt to their conditions. Mars, for instance, has lower gravity and a much colder climate. It will probably make humans taller and lighter, but also may cause them to grow much more body hair to keep warm. And planets with stronger gravity and higher temperatures will, on the contrary, turn humans into stocky, sturdy, and likely hairless creatures. The possibilities are endless. Hey, maybe due to social media, we'll just turn into little blobs with big eyes and thumbs and not much else. So much better for texting. Hope not. It takes about a month for all the skin cells to renew. We shed about 30,000 dead cells every 60 seconds, losing about 9 pounds of skin every year. So, when your friends call you flaky, they're not entirely wrong. Our fingernails grow way faster than toenails. The latter grow almost 4 times slower because they're less frequently damaged than fingernails. Even though we often stumble on them, sudden circulation burst usually doesn't last long. An eyelash is only here to stay for 150 days. The world eyelash record was about 3 inches long. They're also home for tiny mites. We blink about 4,200,000 times a year, at least once every 8 seconds. When we sneeze, the air that we blow speeds out at 100 miles per hour. It could accelerate faster than a brand new Ferrari. Also, you could fracture a rib if you sneeze too hard. Depending on the person, a human produces from half a quart to a full quart of saliva every single day. That's enough saliva to fill several bathtubs in a year. No spit. Saliva acts as a perfect remedy. Wounds in our mouth heal way faster than elsewhere. It also helps to taste food. Our taste buds are ready to perceive it only when it's dissolved in saliva. Now, it may sound crazy, but our bones are stronger than they seem. A cubic inch of human bone can bear about 19,000 pounds, making it 4 times stronger than concrete. The only thing that makes our blood type different is sugar. AB and AB types have 5 types of sugars, while O has only 4, which makes it perfect for donors. Lack of additional sugar doesn't make O type less sweet. In fact, it attracts mosquitoes even more than other blood types. People have only 8 blood types, while cows have 800 and possibly more. Usually, we shed about 50 to 150 hairs a day. An average lifespan of a hair is 5 years, and as soon as an old hair says goodbye to your scalp, a new one starts growing immediately. A human hair is stronger than the same diameter copper wire. A single hair can hold up to 3.4 ounces of weight, and if used properly, a full head can hold up to 18,500 pounds. Our stomach is bigger than it may seem, with a capacity of nearly half a pound when needed, while the average is around 32 ounces. The food is digested within 4 to 6 hours, and it can also dissolve metal, so capacity matters. Lips are much more sensitive than fingers, having around 1 million nerve endings. They are 100 times as sensitive as the tips of fingers. Grooves and furrows make our lip print unique, just like fingerprints are. They also remain unchanged throughout our life. Tongue print is unique too, by the way. So, when are we going to see a tongue print reader? Our belly buttons have an entire zoo in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can also be found in soil in Japan, and even several kinds of bacteria typical for polar ice caps. Our bodies actually glow. Now, we can't see that with the naked eye though, because the light we emit is 1,000 times less intense than the minimum level we can perceive. Humans are the only living things on Earth that can actually blush, or need to, according to Mark Twain. Blushing is provoked by an adrenaline rush. Carmine, used in blushes and lipsticks, is red dye made up of ground-up beetles. Ew. Your ears keep growing throughout your life. They do sweat too, and earwax is actually the kind of sweat they produce. By the way, your nose never stops growing either. Your heart is the only muscle that never gets tired. The aorta is massive. Its diameter is almost as large as a hose in your garden. We emit about 16 to 48 ounces of gases every day, which is enough to fill a small balloon. Okay, you can insert the appropriate sound effect here. Good job. Fat helps our bodies consume vitamins. Such vitamins as A, D, K, and E can be properly absorbed only when they're dissolved in fat. Our bodies have enough fat to produce 7 bars of soap. Blackheads made of sebum aren't black because they're dirty. They get dark because the debris is oxidized. Some parts of your brain can eat up their own neurons and proteins if you don't provide enough sleep. For example, the hypothalamus that's responsible for your sleep, hunger, and body temperature can do that. You can't inhale and swallow at the same time. I know you've just tried it. That thing called the pharynx is used as an air passage when you inhale, or as a food passage when you swallow. When we're awake, our brain may produce enough energy to turn an electric bulb on. It generates about 10 watts of power. You carry enough bacteria in your body to fill a can. Bacteria make about 3 to 5 pounds of your weight, representing 2% of our total weight. Still, most of them are the waste that our body has. The normal body temperature is considered to be at a range of 97 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest fever ever recorded was a critical 115 degrees. Oh, and that person survived. The pinky finger may be the smallest one, but it's the strongest one too. It has 50% of all strength of your hand. A human has about 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Still, cornflakes have more genes than we do. Luckily, it's about sophistication, not the quality this time. Cornflakes 1, human 0. The iron our bodies have is enough to produce 3 nails, each 1 inch long. The carbon that we have can be used for 900 pencils. Your liver has a superpower of growing back removed parts. It can regenerate to the original size from as little as 1/4 of itself. The coolest camera so far has 400 megapixels. A human eye has 576. That's why the sunsets are so much better in real life than in the photos. A roller coaster actually tosses your organs around. When you feel as if your stomach's turning over, it might actually be the case. Even though every person on Earth has an absolutely unique smell, identical twins smell exactly the same. It must be because they have identical genes. Almost half of your taste buds will have gone away by the time you turn 60. Your sense of smell gets less acute as you get older too. When you cough, you release the air at about 60 miles per hour. Turnips can be a great remedy for cough. Just slice them and add some honey on top. A tablespoon 3 times a day is enough. Our skin is the biggest organ that we have. It's also one of the heaviest organs, weighing up to 9 pounds. Hiccups is a 2-step process. First, you inhale a lot of air because of a muscle spasm, and then bang, the airways are closed, the air is blocked, and the famous sound goes inside. We don't smell when we sleep. That's why it's almost impossible to notice a gas leak at night. While sleeping, we can only rely on sound. Well, actually, we can technically smell while we sleep, but normally a good shower can eliminate that. Out of all the senses we have, smell is the most acute one. We remember 65% of smells after a year, but only 50% of things we've seen over the last 3 weeks. We also get a new nose every 28 days, because nose cells are renewed every 4 weeks. As for taste, again, we mostly rely on our smell, since it helps us perceive up to 95% of the flavor. Without our smell sense, it'd be hard to tell an apple from a turnip. While a bunch of flowers may be fragrant for you, there are people who suffer from cacosmia. They always seem to smell something unpleasant, even if there's nothing like that around. We need ears, not only for hearing, but for balance too. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny hair-like sensors helping you keep your balance. If you have red eyes in a photo, blame it on bouncing light. The flash jumps off the blood vessels at the back of your eyes, creating that effect. All the bones in your body are connected to each other except for the hyoid. This bone serves as a support to your tongue, and it's one of the rarest bones to break. Humans have tails. Okay, that sounds weird, I know, but it's true. While our bodies are still forming in the womb, at around day 31 to 35, you can really start to see it. Right now, you have a tail. It's inside you. It's part of your coccyx, to be more precise. If you were to have an X-ray right now and ask the doctor to show you your tail, you'd see some small bony segments at the bottom of your spine. We lost our tails over many millennia of evolution. Imagine if we still had our tails. They'd have to redesign pants. Maybe they'd have a special hole or even a tail pocket. Sitting might be a bit uncomfortable too, to say the least. Our ancestors also had fur. We lost it about 1.2 million years ago. You might be thinking that we still have fur in the form of our body hair, but that's nothing compared to what we used to have. We were thickly furred like chimpanzees and gorillas are now because we needed it to stay warm. You might be annoyed that we lost it if you live somewhere freezing cold like Alaska. Still, you could look at it the other way. Losing our fur lets us enjoy the warm weather a bit more. Living in larger groups meant we shared stuff, and not all of it was positive. It's possible that humans with less hair or fur would get sick less often because they didn't have as many parasites on them, like lice or ticks. This might be the reason why we evolved to lose our fur and become what you see today. Although, I have to admit, more body warmth would come in very handy right now. I wouldn't need to keep this blanket on my legs anymore. Oh, not again. Let me just grab a cup of water to make these hiccups go away. Ah, much better. Okay, in reality, it's not that easy to stop hiccuping. But why is it so hard to stop them? Well, it could be because of a strange feature of a past evolution. One theory is that hiccups have no real use anymore, and that we actually only do it because we come from amphibians. They had both lungs and gills at the same time. When they went underwater, the entryway or glottis to their lungs would close. Fast forward to today, and we still have that mechanism of closing the glottis, but it's useless because we don't live in the water. Wow, how unfair. If we have to get frustrated by hiccups, we should at least be able to get some use out of it. Picture this. You start getting the hiccups, and it's like a superpower. You stop breathing through your lungs and start using some gills. That'd be something else, especially for anyone who really likes swimming. Most of our teeth fit pretty much perfectly in our mouth, but there are 4 of them who arrive late to the party and ruin everything. I'm talking about wisdom teeth. They serve no real purpose, but humans and a few primates have them. However, lucky species like the tamarins don't have to worry about them. About 35% of people don't even have wisdom teeth. We might be on our way to losing them altogether once and for all. No more going to the dentist on a mission to remove them, no more headaches from them either. In Ireland, there are a lot of people with red hair, like really a lot, upwards of 30%. That's a lot of redheads out there. This is a result of genetic drift. Genetic drift is when a feature is passed on from your ancestors without really having any purpose. This is exactly why some people have red hair. So, if you have red hair, there's no real reason for it, it's just your ancestors from a past age who passed on to another member of your family and eventually you. And I think red hair is incredibly fun and attractive. Inside our mother's womb, 16 weeks in, we get a powerful urge to grasp the umbilical, and so we do. Monkeys do this too, and there's a reason for it. It's because when they're out in the wild, they need to hold on to their parents' fur. Humans used to do this, but since we lost all of our fur, there's no reason for us to develop this involuntary grasping, called the palmar grasp reflex. Open wide and say, "Ah." Good, I can see your tonsils now. But what are they even used for? If we take a good look at it, they actually cause more problems than benefits. Tonsils appeared as a way to protect us from germs and other nasty stuff when we eat food. Still, more often than not, all they do is give us a horrible sore throat. Because of this, it's really common for people to get rid of them. Picture a little pouch. We have one of these inside our body. Not exactly like this, but an organ that sort of resembles a pouch, our appendix. Scientists used to think it was completely useless, but recently found that it might actually have some use. Still, like tonsils, it often causes more problems than benefits. People commonly have their appendix removed and face no real consequences, so it can't be that important. It might have helped our ancestors in the past, but issues with the appendix can be a real big stomachache. Okay, you know how some people can weirdly move their ears? Like this. I can't do it. You might be able to, though. Try it for yourself. Some of us can do this because, like other animals, we have a muscle called the auricular muscle, but it's useless for us. Cats, on the other hand, control their ears pretty well. If only we could learn from them. They look forwards and listen out for a noise behind them without moving their heads, just their ears. That's a pretty cool skill if you ask me. Stretch your arm as far as you can, your hand too. Now connect your thumb with your pinky finger. You might see a line appear on your wrist. What you're seeing is called the palmus longus, and about 90% of the world's population has it. Statistically speaking, it's likely that you have it too. Back then, our ancestors needed every bit of help they could get to climb trees and grasp things. But when we started walking, it made these muscles completely useless. Monkeys, on the other hand, still climb trees easily. They have a muscle in their feet called the plantaris muscle, also known as the monkey muscle. Now, we have this too, except we don't really need it because we don't go around doing any monkey business. Like the palmaris longus, about 10% of people are born with it. Chances are, if monkeys are hanging from a branch, that's the muscle they're using. If you're getting that late-night urge for food at 3 a.m., it's because of hunger. You probably already knew that, but what you don't know is that hunger evolved as a trigger to drive us to search for more food. So, if you still got a few extra pounds you're trying to get rid of, you know what to do. Blame it on evolution. Our hungriest ancestors would have tried harder to look for food and survived to pass that trait on to us. Our love of sugary snacks, like delicious chocolate cookies and milk, is because of evolution too. Our taste buds evolved just as hunger did to help us find food that's beneficial to us. You're out for a walk and get hit with a chilly breeze. You're only wearing a t-shirt, so you decide to go back home. You get into your house with chattering teeth and realize that you've got goosebumps too. We get this from our furry ancestors. When it was cold, they would get goosebumps and their fur would stand on end. This would trap air and insulate their bodies like a nice fluffy coat. We don't have fur anymore, so it doesn't do much. Evolution also explains why you might get goosebumps when you're scared. Picture this: you're a caveman out in the wild when suddenly a tiger jumps out at you. It starts growling at you. No worries, your hair stands on end and you look giant. The big pointy fur intimidates the tiger, so it runs off. Or you have the alternative ending, where the tiger doesn't care and eats you anyway. Maybe that's why we lost the fur, because it didn't work all the time. We don't actually need 5 toes. You're doing the laundry and your hands are full. Oh, you dropped a towel. What do? You pick it up with your feet, of course. This is possible because of our 5th toe, but we could do without it. Since we walk upright and we don't need to go around jumping from branch to branch, this toe is mostly useless. We can walk and even run just fine with 4 toes, maybe even less. So who knows, maybe in the future, humans will only have 4 toes on each foot. Yep, your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it is thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that lack of gravity prevents this, which is why fluid accumulates in the brain and skull. While a bunch of flowers may be fragrant for you, there are people with cacosmia who would beg to differ. They perceive all the smells out there as something odorous. Well, that stinks. Speaking of which, out of all the senses we have, smell is the most acute one. We remember 65% of smells after a year, but only 50% of what we've seen over the last 3 weeks. We also get a new nose every 28 days, because the nose cells are renewed every 4 weeks. We don't smell when we sleep. Well, of course, unless you haven't bathed in a while. Your sense of smell goes to sleep when you do, which is why it's almost impossible to notice a gas leak at night. While sleeping, we rely only on sound because the sleep can be disrupted by noise. Almost half of your taste buds will have gone away by the time you turn 60. So maybe you will finally start eating those broccoli. Your sense of smell gets less acute as you get older as well. As for taste again, we mostly rely on our smell since it helps us perceive up to 95% of the flavor. Without the sense of smell, it'd be hard to tell an apple from a turnip. Now, when you cough, you release the air at about 60 miles per hour, so mind the speed limit. Hiccups is a 2-step process. First, you draw in a lot of air because of a muscle spasm, and then bang! The airways are closed, the air is blocked, and the famous sound goes outside. We need ears, not only for hearing but for balance too. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors helping you keep the balance. By the way, ears have bones. These are also the only bones that never grow. We can hear thanks to these little guys since they transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them oscular chain, and it's made up of malleus, incus, and stapes, nicknamed hammer, anvil, and stirrup, which are integral parts of the middle ear. Our ears keep growing throughout our lives. They sweat too, and earwax is actually a kind of sweat they produce. Oh, by the way, the nose never stops growing either, perhaps from all the lies. Your heart is the only muscle that never gets tired. The aorta is massive. Its diameter is almost as large as a hose in your garden. All the bones in our body are connected to each other except for the hyoid, which doesn't articulate with the other bones. This bone serves as support to your tongue, and it's one of the rarest bones to break. If you have red eyes in a photo, blame it on bouncing light. The flash jumps off the capillaries in your retina, creating that effect. As for eyes, the coolest camera so far has 200 megapixels. The human eye has 576. That's why sunsets are so much better in real life than in photos. A roller coaster actually tosses your organs around. When you feel like your stomach's falling down, it's really flipping inside your body. Lips are much more sensitive than fingers, having around 1 million nerve endings. They are 100 times as sensitive as the tips of the fingers. Grooves and furrows make our lip print unique, just like fingerprints are. they also remain unchanged throughout our life. Oh, the tongue print is unique too, by the way. Even though all the people on Earth have an absolutely unique smell, identical twins smell exactly the same. It must be because they have identical genes. Usually, we shed about 50 to 150 hairs a day. An average lifespan for hair is 5 years, and as soon as an old hair says goodbye to your scalp, a new one starts growing immediately. In your body, you carry enough bacteria to fill a can. Bacteria makes about 3 to 5 pounds of your weight, representing 2% of your total weight. Still, most of them are the waste that our body has. A human being has about 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Seems impressive, right? Well, cornflakes have more genes than we do. Luckily, it's about sophistication, not the quantity. Anyway, cornflakes 1, humans 0. We consist of many chemical elements, including iron. The iron in our bodies is enough to produce 3 nails, each 1 inch long. The carbon that we have can be used for 900 pencils. Our feathers can be used to make quill pens. Wait, that's birds. Never mind. Our liver has a superpower of regenerating if part of it was removed. It can grow back to the size that your body needs. Fat helps our bodies consume vitamins. Such vitamins as A, D, K, and E can be properly absorbed only when fat dissolves. Our bodies have enough fat to produce 7 bars of soap. Don't try this at home. When we're awake, our brain may produce enough energy to turn an electric bulb on. It has 10 watts of power. What's that about? Our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can be also found in the soil of Japan and even in polar ice caps. Our bodies actually glow. Anyway, we can't see that with an unaided eye because the light we emit is 1,000 times less intense than the minimum level we can perceive. Speaking of which, carmine used blushes and lipsticks is red dye made up of ground-up beetles. Oh. Saliva helps to taste food. Our taste buds are ready to perceive it only when it's dissolved by saliva. An eyelash is here to stay for 150 days only. The world eyelash record was about 3 inches long. They're also home for tiny mites. We blink about 4,200,000 times a year, at least once every 8 seconds. Could be cool if we were given a cent every time we blink. We could make more than $100 daily. It may sound crazy, but our bones are stronger than lots of building materials. A cubic inch of human bone can bear about 19,000 pounds, making it 4 times stronger than concrete. The only thing that makes our blood type different is sugar. A, B, and AB types have sugars, while O has none, which makes it perfect for donors. No sugar doesn't make O type less sweet. In fact, it attracts mosquitoes even more than the other blood types. People have only 8 blood types, while cows have 800 and possibly more. Like what? Mu positive and Mu negative? Our fingernails grow way faster than toenails. They grow almost 4 times slower because they have less damage than fingernails. Even though we stumble on them often, sudden circulation bursts usually don't last long. Nails don't only help us catch random tiny objects and peel the stickers off. If you didn't have a rigid structure against which to press, you wouldn't be able to judge how firmly to hold anything. Very few people can actually digest milk. The thing is, there's some special enzyme, let's call it a little helper, that breaks down the sugars any milk has. When people grow up, they run out of this enzyme. This sugar's called lactose, so adults that can't digest it are lactose intolerant. 68% of the world's population can't actually digest milk. If you're sleeping, it doesn't mean your whole body rests. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. Humans can't multitask. Really? We need time to switch from one task to another, but if we try to tackle several things at the same time, it's not going to be very productive. Try this one. lift your right foot and start rotating it in a clockwise direction. Try to write the number 6 with your big toe in the air. Now, check the direction your foot's moving. It's moving in the opposite direction because to write the number 6, you need to make a counterclockwise movement. It actually takes a bit longer to start a new habit. It's not 100% true that 18 or 21 days are enough, as many people think. The process of getting a new habit can take up to 254 days, but on average, it takes around 66 days for a new habit to become automatic. Human feet. You know, those sometimes smelly things at the end of your legs? Yeah, those. Well, those are adapted to support us while walking upright. So the bones and ligaments in there are quite rigid. But some people have floppier feet that might indicate our ancestry. A study in nearly 400 people showed that about 1 out of 13 had them like that. Primates use their feet like we use our hands. They climb trees with agility. So they need to have floppy feet to do it efficiently. But humans from 2 million years in the past also had less rigid feet. Scientists believe studying people with this rare bone structure may help understand how ancient humans walked, and also whether this floppiness actually helps in climbing too. Now, our height, the shape of our body, and skin color depend on where our ancestors used to live. But we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get pigmented to adapt. Now, a second pair of arms would come in handy in a lot of situations. But an extra pair of fingers might be helpful too. About 1 in every 500 people is born with 6 digits on either hand. In most cases, the extra fingers are considered useless and removed. But research has shown that those who've left them could do lots of everyday things with just one hand, like tying their shoelaces or playing video games with gamepads. Okay, how many fingers am I holding up now? About 1 in 25,000 people are born with the thumbs on their hands having 3 flanges instead of the usual 2, giving their hands a very extraordinary look. And when it happens in combinations with 6 fingers, which isn't too rare by the way, the picture is even more cryptic. Such a condition doesn't bring much discomfort. In fact, some actions are even easier done with a thumb that has an extra flange. Like thumbing your nose, perhaps. It's been believed for a long time that a person could distinguish more than 10,000 smells. Some research done not long ago showed that people were able to distinguish more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Like with Grandpa and the big baked bean party when you were a kid. We can accidentally digest small objects such as plastic items, glass, coins, and many other small objects. They'll make their way through the digestive tract within 48 hours. And there's even a man who managed to eat a whole airplane. Now, it took him years though, but little by little, he finished his metal meal with no trouble at all. I had a joke here about passing a landing gear, but yeah, I'll skip that one. Now, every person has their unique smell that can't be confused with anyone else's. It's exactly the same mechanism that allows other animals to find members of their family in packs and distinguish them from strangers. Still, if you have an identical twin, you will both have almost the same smell. Scientists found that body odors of identical twins are 10 times more similar than those of unrelated people. Unfortunately, a well-trained dog would still easily distinguish you two. Now, most people have 3 types of cones in their eyes, allowing us to see millions of colors. Women typically see more shades, but sometimes they see so much more that they're literally unable to comprehend the difference. That's thanks to a 4th cone in their eyes that enhances their vision 100-fold. And what's more, the number of women born with this extra cone is about 12%. But only a few of them can actually use it because in most cases it remains inactive. Now, imagine falling from the roof of a 10-story building and getting away with a few bruises and scratches, but no broken bones whatsoever. Such a genetic anomaly was discovered back in 1994, and it is associated with the LRP5 gene. It makes a person's bones about 8 times denser than normal, which basically makes them almost indestructible. There's a whole extended family in Connecticut that has this mutation, and all 20 members of it have extraordinarily dense bones. Scientists who did research of the blood samples of this family say they have the strongest skeletons in the world. Many people think that a cleft chin is a sign of a strong and independent character. But it's really a gene mutation, which results when the bones or muscles in the lower jaw don't fuse completely during development inside the womb. Just like many other anomalies, it's hereditary, which means, yes, you can blame your parents. However, if a person has a cleft chin, it doesn't necessarily mean that their offspring will have it too, because environmental factors in the womb or the presence of modifier genes, genes that influence other genes, can prevent it. There are no two identical brains in the world. Brain structure highly depends on conditions in which it develops and grows. And so, we all have something individual to us even on a biological level. And just like your fingers, your tongue too has a unique print on it that won't be like any other in the world. Nah, let's not compare tongues. A less impressive but not less rare condition is the so-called double crown. A crown is that patch of hair on top of your head that goes in a spiral. It's pretty hard to miss if you have short hair, especially because it's the hardest part to smooth down. People normally have one, but there are individuals unlucky enough to have two, and double the smoothing trouble. Still, some believe having a double crown is, on the contrary, a sign of good luck or even high intelligence. On a similar note, you ever wake up and look at your tousled hair with frustration? And now imagine having this disheveled look forever and not being able to do anything about it. It's called the uncombable hair syndrome. Your hair's always sticking out every which way, and no amount of water or hair gel can tame it. Heterochromia makes your eyes 2 different colors, say one hazel and the other blue. It has to do with the levels of melanin in your body, a pigment that affects the colors of your skin, hair, and, yes, your eyes. There's also partial heterochromia, which is only a part of one of your eyes is differently colored. It's not too common in humans, but I'll bet you've seen it in dogs, huskies in particular. This breed is naturally predisposed to this condition, and it looks super cool. Now, the rarest genetic condition there probably is, called the golden blood, can be a lifesaver for millions of people. There are just 40 known carriers of this blood type in the world. They don't have any Rh blood cell antigens, which means anyone can accept their blood, even those with extremely rare blood types. And although their blood isn't golden in color, it's certainly worth more than just gold. Now, turn your arm palm up on some flat surface and touch your pinky and thumb together. Now, look at your wrist. Do you see a muscle getting tense under your skin there? If you don't, that's okay. It only means you're in about 10% of people who don't have the palmaris longus. It's a muscle that scientists believe used to be useful for hanging and gripping in our ancestors. In modern humans, though, it has no real value, so we're evolving to drop it altogether. About 1/2 to 1% of people in the world have an extra hole next to their ears that serves no clear purpose. And it is pretty useless, although not dangerous either. It's just a sign that your ancestors used to have gills. According to estimations, only about 6% of the world's population can solve the Rubik's Cube. Despite it being just a skill like any other, most of us have to learn it, either by watching tutorials on the web or asking someone for help. And only a small percentage of people can actually solve it on their own. If you're one of them, you're a truly rare individual. Raising your eyebrows in surprise is a common thing, and raising just one to express skepticism isn't rare either. But it depends on which eyebrow you usually raise. If you can do this trick with either eyebrow, you're actually unique. Since your eyebrows are controlled by muscles, you can train yourself to raise either of them at will. But it often takes time and conscious effort. Moving your ears is about the same. Not so many people can do it. And there are even fewer of those who can wiggle just one ear instead of both. It's an ancient feature that dates back to our primate ancestors who used their ears to control their surroundings. And of course, it's still present in most mammals. Now, while most people around the world are right-handed, being a lefty puts you in a minority. That's not surprising. But a really remarkable thing is ambidexterity. Only about 1% of the world's population can use both their hands equally well, meaning they could hold a spoon, pick their nose, or write in their notebook switching hands with no trouble at all. How useful would that be? The human body is this perfectly balanced machine, right? Well, not when I'm using it. Normally, all its parts work seamlessly together to keep us thriving and, well, alive. Each of our organs is essential for our day-to-day activities, from breathing, walking, talking, and coming up with bright ideas that push humanity forward. But are they really essential? Do we really need all those body parts? Or are some of them just ancient relics that we just got stuck with in this weird game of evolution? Take wisdom teeth, for example. Nah, somebody already took mine. Yeah, they're those pairs of teeth stuck in the back of your mouth you often have to go to the dentist for. They're also known as third molars, and while they can be used to chew food, a lot of people think they're just unnecessary. And get this, around 22% of people worldwide don't even have all four of them. When they do grow in, they're the most likely to become impacted, which means they get stuck in the jawbone sideways and can't properly come through the gums. It's all because our jaws are often too small to accommodate these extra guys. Some smart scientists think that's because we've evolved to have smaller jaws over time. Recent evidence also shows that what we eat as kids might also be to blame, but it's hard to know for sure. Apparently, munching on hard-to-chew foods like raw veggies and nuts can actually stimulate jaw growth, while eating soft processed foods can kinda stunt it. And that leaves little space for our back teeth to come in and, do their thing. Will they disappear altogether in the future? I guess we human mammals will just have to wait and see. Now let's talk about the vomeral nasal organ, or as I like to call it, the nose's secret instrument. Ooh. You see, rodents and other mammals have this awesome ability to communicate with each other using chemical signals called pheromones. And guess what? They have a special organ called the vomeral nasal organ, or VNO, that helps them detect these pheromones. Here's where it gets interesting. While most adult humans have something resembling a VNO in their nose, it turns out that it's basically a useless remnant. Neuroscientists even say that if you look at the anatomy of this organ, you won't see any cells that resemble those of similar organs from other mammals. Also, this organ in humans doesn't seem to be communicating with the brain either. Now, it's not all bad news. Even though the human VNO is pretty useless, it looks like it still might respond to some pheromones. Will humans keep this organ on their evolutionary to-do list? For now, I'd place it in the maybe pile. Now, here's a tail. Animals that feature tails need these structures for a lot of things. Some need it for balance, others for navigation, while some need it to attract potential partners. But did you know that when we're just a few weeks old in our mother's belly, we actually have tails too? That's right, we have a whole little tail complete with vertebrae. As we develop, that tail magically disappears and we're left with our trusty tailbone. Humans and apes are unique in that we don't have tails, unlike other primates. It's a mystery why apes lost their tails, but we can all agree that it makes us stand out in a crowd. However, once in a blue moon, a human is born with a little vestigial tail. Cute, right? Well, don't get too excited, because these tails don't have vertebrae and can sometimes be associated with a tricky condition of the spine. Either way, these tails are usually harmless and can be easily removed with a quick surgery. And let's be honest, it's not like we're going to miss it. After all, who needs a tail when you have arms and legs to get around? Plus, can you imagine trying to find pants that fit with a tail sticking out the back? Not a good look. There's little to no chance humans will end up needing tails in the future, so I'm guessing the tailbones are bye-bye in future generations. Humans also have a funny little fold of membrane in the inner corner of the eyes, called the plica semilunaris. It's basically what's left of a third eyelid, which is still found in some animals, like gorillas and other primates. But here's the funny thing. Even our close relatives, the chimpanzees, have this little fold that appears to be useless too. So we're not alone in this eye quirkiness. Speaking of unusual membranes, they serve a variety of functions in different animals, such as protecting the eye from dirt and moisture, or hiding the iris from predators. Some species can even see through their transparent membranes when they're underwater or underground. Now, the reasons why we humans lost our third eyelid is still a bit of a mystery. Maybe changes in our habitat and eye physiology made it unnecessary, or maybe we just evolved to be too cool for a third eyelid. Who knows? With or without vestigial organs, it's interesting to imagine what humans might look like in the future. Many organs have become obsolete because of our lifestyle changes. Care to have a peek into what we might look like in the future? And in the same vein, or artery, have you heard of the concept of text claw? It's where you spend so much time typing on your phone or laptop that your hand starts to cramp up like a claw. And that's just one of the physical changes that could happen to us if we don't take care of our bodies in this tech-heavy world. But it's not just our hands that are affected. We could end up with 90-degree elbows from constantly holding our devices at that angle, and even a smaller brain from all the distractions and information overload. Now, I know what you're thinking. We just can't give up technology and go back to the Stone Age. And you're right, we don't have to. But we do need to be aware of the potential negative effects and take steps to reduce their damage. That's why a team of designers put their creative efforts together to present Mindy, a future human whose body has physically changed due to the constant and never-ending use of smartphones, laptops, and other types of maniacal devices. While Mindy's exaggerated changes may not be in our future, the concerns behind them are real. So, what can we do? Well, one suggestion is to take regular breaks from our screens and stretch our legs a little. Maybe even encourage some office yoga or dance parties to get the blood flowing. We don't have to give up technology completely, but we do need to be mindful of its effects on our bodies and minds. Many years in the future, we might even get smaller in size. One scientist reckons that if we were smaller, our bodies would need less energy, which would come in super handy in our increasingly crowded planet. It's funny to think about how different our lives are now compared to when we were hunter-gatherers. Back then, we only had to interact with a handful of people each day. But now, remembering people's names is a super important trait, and it might even be something we grow to become better at. Or, technology might actually play a role in our evolution. Scientists believe that we could one day have implants in our brains that help us remember people's names. It's like having a biological phone book directly in your body. Wouldn't that be cool? Who knows? Maybe in the future, we'll even have visible technology as part of our appearance. Imagine having an artificial eye that can see different colors and visuals. And don't even get me started on what we might look like if we colonize Mars. With the lower gravity, our bodies could change in all sorts of ways. We might have longer arms and legs, or even insulating body hair like our Neanderthal ancestors. It's hard to pinpoint what we might look like in the future without very precise data to back the models up. But it's fair to say these changes will be interesting, to say the least. As for me, well, it's too late to say the least. I've said over 1,400 words here already. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.